We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway hurling podcast, with me, Patrick Earley and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings-on in Galway hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and of course focusing on inter-county, in this Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
After beating the reigning All-Ireland champions Tipperary last weekend, you'd have probably expected a slightly easier assignment next time out. But unfortunately, that's not the case for Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final against none other than, I suppose, John Kiley's, how will we call them, not so jolly Green Giants, we'll say, the Limerick hurlers this Sunday at 4 p.m. in Croke Park. I'm delighted to be joined, as usual, by Patrick, and it's great, Chunky, great to have you back after. Well, I don't think we've seen you since the club season. You've been busy.
No, lads. Good to be back chatting to you. Anyway, you've been at a couple of more games than I've been at anyway since. But no, it's great. It's great, and good to be back here. We're chatting hurling. Great. We're still in the championship, and great. There is the championship. I see some lads giving out there on Twitter today about not getting crowds and stuff like. But look, the truth being told, it's great to have it. Jeez, I'm happy enough to be able to watch matches on the telly there. Once I'm left alone for the hour and a half and I don't come out through the wall. Other than that, not too bad.
What have you, like, as myself and Patrick have been on the last few weeks, Chunky, what have you made of Galway so far this year? Have you been impressed with them, or just as a whole, we'll say we won't focus on any one game, but just in general, what have you thought of them?
Yeah, no, the truth being told, I'd be very bullish about Galway, to be honest, in a good way. I give them... obviously, look, as we said before, we came on air, like they've a lot to improve on, but I'd be quite impressed. Like we're after knocking out the All Ireland champions, like in Tipperary, and you seen how animated they were, Liam Sheedy, and like to me, like all you can do is beat whoever's in front of you, and you can't judge some performances because every day is going to be different. Like, and we probably played a little better against Kilkenny and didn't get the result, but at the end of the day, they're there, I think, on merit. I think it's a super Galway side. I spoke to even some people within the county and probably not giving them the credit they deserve. In my own view, I think they're a super team. We've got some super hurlers. I think our top hurlers we probably have more top hurlers than Limerick likes going in the next day once we get the performance. But yeah, look, as I say, looking at the games on the couch, they're doing well. Delighted to be there, and to be fair to the new management, you'd have to give them great credit because they're not afraid to make changes, and it's paid dividends, and they're giving lads a chance, etc. And I'm not saying other teams didn't do that, management teams, but like for a new team, and it's very easy to stick to 16, 17 lads, and they haven't done that. And look, they're in the All Ireland semi-final, and to me, we could keep this very short. Galway are definitely going to win. The bookies have it wrong. And Burke will be man of the match. So if you're going back and anthem, there's your two bets. That's it.
Right, we'll wrap it up there. So thanks a million for joining us.
Yeah.
But
when the pub's open, you can enjoy the money.
That's it. Jesus, yeah, I think they're 3-1 as well, actually. But they're 3-1, but they're second favourites of the All Ireland at the same time. So it just goes to show what a huge game it is at the weekend.
Yeah, and even the other game, to be fair, it's hard to call. Like, I was talking to Zolly Cannon asked me yesterday, like, what I think of the other game, would I give Waterford a chance? Like, and I said, Jesus, I would. Like, I know we're here to talk with Limerick, but like the other game as well. So it's wide open. It's a great championship. We've seen what happened with the football last weekend as well. Like, and that was brilliant as well. So look, at underdogs means nothing in this, but like I don't have Galway as 2 or 3-1 outsiders. Not a hope. We're too good. We're too good of a spine. We've too many good players. So I think we'll thrive on that as well. And look, people will say the players don't know that. That's bullshit. The players know they're underdogs. They know they're being written off. Like, that's a fact. And those little things will help. Like, look, lads, no one's giving us a chance here. And look, maybe some people aren't, but I certainly give them a massive chance anyway.
I suppose, Chunky, you were talking there beforehand that you were trying to pick your team. But there's a couple of positions up for grabs, we'll say. But Patrick, do you think now O'Neill is approaching anywhere close to what he knows? Do you think he knows his best 15 at the moment, or or is he a long way away from it?
He definitely doesn't know it, no, because you have different lads coming in and making the impact of last. Like our own man Adrian Dewey wouldn't have been in his plans for starting this weekend, only for what he did coming on the last year, So a lot of it depends on that. Like you look at what Hart did last weekend after being left out the week before, You have other lads, Niall Burke had his chance and didn't get a go at all last week. So he definitely doesn't know his best team. Probably you take the opposition into account this weekend in terms of what team he's going to pick. We all know about the battle of the middle third that's going to be there. So does he want to get more physicality in there by sticking in an Adrian Toohey instead of a Johnny Coen or something like that? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So there's a lot of different things that come into it when he's picking his team. There'll be certain lads that will be maybe more suited to playing starting against Tip than against Limerick. And then also he has to look at the impact off the bench. If you start certain lads, are you potentially losing their impact off the bench, which we all know is going to be critical in that, I suppose, third and final quarter, especially because Limerick are going to have that impact. So a lot of different things to weigh up this week in terms of, does he start with his best team, or does he consider maybe trying to finish with his best team as well? There's different arguments to be made there. So plenty to mull over for sure, but it's a happy enough position to be in, isn't it?
That's for sure. I suppose one aspect, Chunky, would be, I suppose we went with a sweeper the last two games as well. Pádraig Mannion was there against Kilkenny, and then Davy Burke started there, and Pádraig Mannion went back then when Davy Burke went off. What have you made of that? Do you think it kind of limits us in attack, or what have you made of it in general?
I was thinking about it during the week. As I say, it's very hard sometimes when you're on the couch to see the position of these players, and you're taking the commentator's view. But look at Davy Burke the last day, for instance. I thought he was going quite well from the couch. I like his positional sense to me. Like, I know lads have said, has he played that position before? He got on a lot of ball. Granted, maybe when Pádraig Mannion went in, his use of the ball, he's probably a bit more accustomed to playing through the lines. So maybe that was something they planned. I'm not sure, but listen. Will we go to maybe the new management? They obviously might have had it in their heads that, look, we probably will come up against a Limerick who like to sit back, and maybe they were pre-planning. I don't know, but we probably will stick with it now anyway. So who will go there? Probably more than likely be Pádraig Mannion. But on to David Burke. Would you leave him off the team? To me, not a hope. Like, you have to play him. For me, like, he's too much of a big day player. He's always the fore for Thomas, is always the fore for Galway. Like, probably was he man of the match the year we won 2017 as well. Like, you don't write him off. I don't know if he's injured or why he came off the last day. You were both at the game. I don't know. Was he? I thought he struck in a mountain ball. Maybe they pushed up on him or something. But yeah. Sweeper would probably go at one, probably be Pádraig Mannion for me, probably most accustomed to it. And does it affect us up front? It shouldn't. Like, once we push forward, like you saw the last day, I actually thought from the telly that Joe Cooney was playing wing forward. At one stage I said, geez, the commentator's getting this wrong again, like, because he was kind of annoying me throughout the game. He was getting players' names wrong, like. It's the small things that annoy you when you're in your own nutrition zone. But like, I was watching Joe Cooney and I was really studying to see, is he playing wing back? He was obviously playing wing back, so we have that license to go forward with the sweeper. And listen, you mentioned the middle third there, like, sure, it's just going to be a war zone, and we're just going to have to be ready, and I think we will be ready. But sweeper, it looks like we're going to stick with it, but. Who will be? I'd say the next day, I couldn't see it being anyone else but Pádraig Mannion, because he probably has played that role. I've seen him. I know we played them in the club there. Might have been league games a few years ago. He's played that role. He knows what he's at there, especially with the ball. It's grand reading the game. All them players are top players, Davy Burke, but you really need to know what the plan is going forward with the ball. You're trying to, beat the half back line, which is something we'll probably need to do the next day as well. Or You're going to play through the lines and kind of clear their lads in the half back line. Or, I'm sure they'll have a plan. Look, I'm not going to sort it here this evening anyway, but they'll probably go with a sweeper.
Yeah. Just you mentioned, Chunky, that the middle third will be a war zone, and that's something you've highlighted here in the notes, Patrick. You expect it to be a game defining sector. Probably it always is, but in particular this weekend, given the way Limerick play.
Definitely, yeah, and it's something that it comes across more in Limerick games than it does when you're playing other teams. Like the puckouts. I look back at the 2018 final today. Like that's the kind of commitment, the links we go to here on Tribe Talk. We put ourselves through self torture for you, the viewers at home. But I look back at it there today anyhow, and that their dominance in that sector, be it on our puckouts and the pressure they were applying all over the field and forcing us into loose clearances where they had the bodies to pick up the ball there. So it's hugely important that if we're playing a sweeper to protect our full back line, because there will be plenty of space in front of them. So no issue playing the sweeper in that regard, but you also need to give your halfbacks the freedom and the license to push up and to be a huge part of that war zone, because they'll be needed there to win that dirty ball. And like that's the easiest way of making your full back line's life easy is by holding the ball yourself and not giving Limerick the chance to pump it in. So I think it's critical that on puckouts especially, that we have the bodies swarmed in around it, and that we have, the importance of even your jab lift. I know you're going to be on a better surface the next day, but the importance of getting the ball up first time next Sunday is absolutely critical, because you're not going to get it again. There's not going to be a second chance with these lads. And watching back the game again today, the intensity they brought to it in the first 10 or 15 minutes, by which time they should have been 7 or 8 points up at least. It was, it definitely rocked Galway, and it was something they hadn't faced against Clare in the previous 2 games. And in fairness, James Horans ref that day as well, and he allowed it to be physical, and it was fair. Like, nothing they were doing was over the top or anything like that. So the ref allowed it and allowed the game to flow in that regard. So God, they'll need to front up in that aspect, And just one other thing on the sweeper, and like David Burke, Chunky, as you mentioned, man of the match in the 17 final. And he was definitely Galway's man of the match in the 18 final as well. And obviously playing as his own role as in midfield. But his runs through the centre caused Limerick an awful lot of problems when in a game where our forwards really didn't function at all, bar Joe Cooney. And the other thing I noticed was just the amount of 50-50 ball we hit in. We didn't have a hope. Every ball we hit in was just lumped in, and it was just bread and butter for the Limerick backs. So it's something we've improved on this year. But even looking back at Davy Work as the sweeper the last day, there was still plenty of ball that didn't favour your forwards delivered in the last day, and that's something that Pádraig Mannion probably is better at offering, probably more accustomed to, with how they're playing with a Haskell and how he plays with Galway as well. So it's very important that the ball you're delivering in is favourable for the boys inside and gives them the chance, gives them the slight edge on their man,
Just on those 2 boys inside, Chunky, I suppose one big positive from O'Neill's tenure so far has been the form of Concannon and Whelan. Like that's where we can really do damage to Limerick, isn't it? If we do get the ball inside, good quality ball to the 2 boys, because they're in lethal form at the moment.
Oh yeah, listen. 2 serious operators, and they're at top of their game, and it's actually something I was thinking about during the week. Limerick they're a bit vulnerable when they're ran at, and I think we need to probably run at them the next day. Their full back line, it's not their strongest full back line. I'd say they have, with injuries and stuff. So I'd say we'll try and target it, to be honest. And I think there's probably a couple of goals in us if we need to probably get past the half back line or even run it. And another thing I was thinking, if it becomes a massive war zone, I wouldn't have an issue with playing Brian Concannon and Whelan. If you had to put the 2 of them out to the half forward line, what are you going to do when you be putting Joe Cannon into the full forward line or something? He's going to cause consternation without the ball even going in there. There's going to be lads panic. What are we going to do here? And Conor Whelan can do a job in half forward line. we've seen Brian Concannon working there with the club. They both can take scores from out. So if we need energy out there, you know what I mean? We've lots of options like all through the forward line. So like obviously option A is going to be to try and have the two lads inside. For me, get the ball in there and get enough of it in, because to be fair to both of them, they're able to win. They're able to win the dirty ball high or low. Like what Whelan did for the goal the last day. Like it probably wasn't really spoke about, but geez, like the skill levels. Someone actually maybe it was on the Sunday game or something, but the skill level to where he picked it up, it was actually JJ Delaney or someone that was mentioning, but the pick up and turn was phenomenal. Like, so it doesn't matter what way it comes into him, high, low. He's a top player and his strength is phenomenal. Like he's got, if he gets enough of ball, he's going to do damage. And to be fair to the two of them, they're working off each other brilliantly. Like, you know, it's a joy to watch. You know, like.
Yeah, just on that, I suppose, Patrick, would you be in favour of maybe starting someone like, say, Chunky touching it there, but maybe throwing in Joe for maybe 10 minutes to upset them initially, or, you know, moving them in and out, because it's something we haven't seen, you know, in the last few years, and, you know, probably when he burst onto the scene, that's where he done the most damage, and, you know, maybe we if we were lacking previously for a bit of goals, you know, goal chances, I know last weekend was probably a bit of an exception, but would you be willing to throw him in, would you say, or do you think his influence is too important, say at 11 or 10 or 12, we'll say?
Oh no, it's definitely something I'd like to see for a period at least, and just try, as you say, Chunky, try spook them a small bit, and try throw something at them that they're not prepared for. Like
it was not to butt in, but it was something I was thinking the last day that, you know, the 4 quarters with the water breaks, like, Jesus, can you imagine just like saying, right, Joe, it doesn't matter how the game is going, for the start of the second water break, you're going 14, and just stay there for the first 7 minutes of the 15 minutes. I've no doubt, like, if we got ball in there, I don't care what lads are saying there, he's going to cause absolute hassle, especially to the likes of Morrissey and Nash, because they're not natural fullbacks. Very good hurlers, don't get me wrong, they're fantastic hurlers. But you're going to cause panic, and as I said, them lads have a lot of miles on the clock as well. So, like, you know, they might only have to make a couple of dart rolls. But anyway, look, it's all hearsay. But it's definitely an option to me. Anyway, definitely, and it's a more central role, and for a couple of minutes, as I say, if nothing else. And it's not like you're taking away from it either, because the lads you're bringing out, Whelan, them lads, sure, geez, they're going to cause panic out as well. Like.
And the other thing is that, you know, Limerick, like, obviously Kylie will have his matchups done for Concannon and Whelan being inside. You know, Sean Finn and Whelan is the obvious one. It'd be very unlikely that, you know, I'd be very surprised if that's not how it works out. But with the Limerick backs, you know, they're very much, they hold their position, and whatever man is there, that's where they play. You don't often see a Sean Finn going out to the half back line like you would see with, say, an Aidan Hart or something like that. You know, they're not. And it's not to say they're not first, because I'm sure they are. Obviously, you've seen it with Dan Morrissey. He's done a decent job for them so far. But just the way they play, they like to stay in that position. You know, Jeremy Burns is the number 5. Hannon is the 6. You know, Morrissey's the fullback. Sean Finn's the right cornerback. You know, and that's how it's been since this team got together initially. So what if, you know, you start Conor Whelan inside and Sean Finn's on him, and then Conor Whelan comes out and Joe Canning goes in for 10 minutes? Does Sean Finn go out with him? Does somebody else go back? Does Sean Finn stay and let Conor Whelan off? You know, make them adapt to what you're doing rather than the other way around, you know?
That's for sure. And just on Sean Finn, I suppose he done very well in the 2018 final on Whelan, but Whelan has gone to another level physically since then. Like, he's just, you know, he's gone so strong. He was strong then, but now he's gone to an absolute another level since then, we'll say. You know, you can tell you touched on before, Patrick, that he mightn't be as big in the gym as some other lads, but Jesus, it's just a natural kind of physicality that he has, and he'll put his hand or his head where the ball is coming, regardless if it's in the air or coming in low, hard along the ground. He's there and he's willing to do it. Chunky, just kind of moving on then. We will say, I suppose they're probably the two most consistent teams over the last years. I think what's this Galway's 5th semi-final in the last few years. Limerick won the All-Ireland in 2018, all right, but I know last year they had a bit of a blip, we'll say, against Kilkenny, but I suppose since that they've won 2 Munsters, 2 leagues, and, you know, they probably only lost 1 real big game, if we're to be perfectly honest about it.
Yeah, listen, they're there on merit. You know, they've been winning Munster, winning leagues. But look that's grand. They want to be winning All Ireland titles. That's what they want to be winning, and they have won one and they lost last year. And as I said, there's a lot of people talking them up now. So like they're a top team, but as I say, Galway had one blip last year. Very unlucky. Other than that, Galway have been a really, really top team, and I think if anything, Galway are getting nearly a little stronger because the likes of Fintan Burke coming in, Brian Concannon, Whelan getting strong. You know, like they have matured pretty well. Like so, yeah, they're two top teams. Like looking at the game the last day, I'd say we'd be very disappointed to come out without a loss. Like I know Cathal Barrett got sent off and stuff. I'm not fully sure that was the full reason we won. Like to be fair, we finished out that game pretty well. You know, very mature kind of side the way we finished. Like Tipperary lose one of the forwards last year in the All-Ireland semi-final against Wexford, and there were 4 points. Or sorry, Wexford were 4 points up, and then the extra man, and Tip went on and won it. Like so, do you know what I mean? You can't just automatically. The same lads are turning around this year saying, should they lost a man?" But like that wasn't the case last year. So.
Just on the kind of trajectories, Patrick, it seems to be since the 18 final that in a lot of people's eyes, Galway have kind of fallen away. Maybe not in our eyes now, but in national media and stuff like that in the lead up to the season, there was very little talk about Galway being genuine All Ireland contenders, whereas Limerick were red hot favourites in a way. It's interesting from that kind of point of view, like as in Galway are coming in as probably heavy underdogs still in a lot of people's eyes, and that should be very beneficial for them as well, considering there'll be no shortage of motivation as well to maybe avenge that defeat in 2018, because this is the first right rattle they've had at them since, and they will have felt that they didn't perform that day, at Galway, and they had a heavy schedule coming in. I think it was 8 matches and 2 replays. There was plenty of mitigating reasons why Galway mightn't have performed as well on that day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're in a great position going into the weekend. Underdogs, and we're coming in off the back of a performance that we won the game, but there was an awful lot of stuff that there to improve on, and it's a great place to be. And you're not necessarily going to do the work and training this week to fix things, but they're just things that didn't go right in the day. It's not rocket science to fix what went wrong last week. It's just a matter of players taking the responsibility and just improving on it themselves. Yeah, it's like in the kind of the narrative of last year in national circles was that it was a total write-off of the year and Galway were a disaster. But like the reality is, the only problem last year was Galway didn't beat Carlow enough in the first rounds. That's all that went wrong last year. Like there's no shame in going up to Parnell Park and losing against a Dublin team when you're down Conor Whelan, you're down Joe Canning for most of the game. They went down in the big Kenny in their own backyard, played poorly against Wexford and got a draw out with but last year wasn't that bad. It was just desperately unlucky not to go through. And had they gone through, I think they would have had an awful big say last year as to where the All-Ireland ended up when you consider that Kilkenny got there, and the final wasn't really a proper reflection on them either. But the freshness this year has added to it big time, I think. And the few fresh faces in there. They've established themselves now. They're all going to start the next day. They've got a few right good tests under their belt, and they've grown into it. And getting back into Croke Park, I think you'll see a huge improvement from our lads. And Limerick, fairness, they have been beaten everything that's been put in front of them in Munster in particular the last couple of years. But I'd question the quality of that Munster championship in certain times in the last year or two. You'd probably argue that Leinster was better than Munster in terms of quality. And not even talking about quality games, just quality of teams. I'd say Leinster was better than Munster last year. And this year, in fairness, I probably Wexford were a disaster. But for me, Galway and Kilkenny are every bit as good as Limerick and Waterford there anyhow. And that's what we have. We have two fairly finely balanced games at the weekend. So certainly, I think there's definitely a point to prove still after 18, but you would have to say that Limerick are a better team than they were in 18 as well. So take that into account. But yeah, big step up needed. But the fact that they're capable of it, would fill you with plenty of confidence anyhow.
Yeah.
Just on that as well, lads, since 2018 we've had a lot of injuries as well, like you say, with the likes of Joe, and back into the 18 final we kind of went in. Garrett Mack was kind of injured, Dahi Burke,
Hanbury
John.
was as well, wasn't he?
There was probably concerns over John Hanbury, stuff like that, and we did it last year as well. But I just heard John, or not, Jesus, I was going to say John Kiley, but we were talking today. We're Shane O'Neill. But we were talking to, or listening to him today, and he was saying like the full pick again, like, so that's massive now. Like they have a full clean bill of health, like, and with the squad of players that's in Galway, and we've seen ourselves there, the calibre of club hurling at the minute, like, to have a full squad to pick from, and Limerick don't have a full squad. Like, they've had a few retirements and there a couple of lads injured in the full backline as well. I know there's one or two to come back soon, but they don't have it can affect a team, like, you know what I mean? They're moving around a couple of lads there. Kyle Hayes, they're not sure what to do with Darragh Donovan and with Keane Lynch. Like, it's not ideal as well. Like, if you're looking for small little things to pick at, like.
Yeah. I suppose just on that, I suppose Galway have changed it up a good bit, particularly defensively, Chunky, since 2018 as well. We've a new goalkeeper now. We probably have a new look defence with Joseph Cooney going back there, and then we have the likes of Fintan Burke and Shane Cooney as well. They probably had a bit of freshness to it. Do you think maybe the backline has improved since 2018, or how would you rate it in comparison to then the backline now, or do you see any changes being made at the weekend maybe back there?
Still a lot of the same personnel, bar maybe Shane and Fintan are in, like, but you still have your Dahi Burke full back, Garrett Mack centre back, and I'd say the next day the management will be hoping that they can try and keep Dahi at 3, and I know he's very comfortable coming out with the ball and stuff, but the truth being told, like, geez, like, he's a colossus for us there, like, and he's minding the square, he's organising the defence. But probably Garrett Mack could be hoping to probably, like I say, it's hard to see in the telly, but he'd be hoping to up his performance, like, because we need Garrett rocking it out at centre back, basically, like, the size of him, his skill levels, etc. There's talks of maybe picking up Garrett Hegarty. I'm not sure. I'd say they'll probably leave that to Joe Cooney, and we'll probably try and leave him.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably try and leave him anchor in 6, because that's basically. But look, we've lots of options. Like, Fintan Burke is well capable of coming back in the full back line. Shane Cooney is well capable of coming from corner back out centre back. So we definitely have lots of options. Whereas probably in that time we probably wouldn't have been as comfortable bringing maybe our corner back out centre back. But we certainly have options now, and yeah, it's definitely, as I say, it's probably a lot of the same lads. With the freshness is obviously a couple of young lads from Thomas is coming in, and like, geez, it's a joy to watch. I have been very impressed now with Fintan Burke, especially since he came in. I'll be watching him closely now. Like, his use of the ball is brilliant. Like, he's not panicking on the ball. Like, even he's slipped once or twice, but he's still getting the ball to hand. Like, he's definitely comfortable at intercounty level. Anyway.
That's for sure. I suppose, Patrick, it'll be Ian Murphy's biggest challenge yet, without a doubt, considering what he's facing. He's facing 3 towers back there in the back line, and if you go short, you know what, Limerick, that only kind of suits Limerick at times. I suppose there's a fella there that actually just got in contact with me just before we came on air there, and his name is Sean Flynn. He does hurling stats. You can follow him there on Hurling Talk 1, I think, is his handle on Twitter. But he just sent me on a couple of stats in terms of puckouts. I'll just go through them here. Galway, he is here. Galway have won 14 of 38 long puckouts in their last 2 championship games. And then in contrast with Limerick there, Limerick has scored 125 off the opposition puckout in their 3 championship games so far. So puckouts are going to be absolutely massive at the weekend, and it's a day probably where we'll probably need to see the best of Ian Murphy, won't we? We'll need him to probably have his best game in the Galway jersey so far.
No, for sure, yeah. And it was another thing I picked up on from watching back the 18 final today was we went short with an awful lot of puckouts, which was grand, but when particularly Hanbury and Aero got ball in the 2 corners, they turned, and all they saw was a green body coming at them and nothing else, and the only option was to run every time, and that's just not good enough for that same pressure is going to be applied to if we're going short the next day. But they need to have options outside them. They need to have their wing backs coming looking to take that ball off them. and deliver it in that way, you know, because if you are going to have to mix it up, you can't go along every time, and you need to go short to your cornerbacks. You need to try pick out Joseph Cooney and Finton on the wings, you know, which, as we know, we've seen in his array of skills and in his puckouts, and that he's well able of doing it and has been doing it, in fairness. But it takes courage to do it, and it takes even more courage if it goes wrong to stay doing it, because there's nothing worse than losing your bit of confidence if a one goes wrong, and then Limerick getting set because they know this lad's frightened here. He's not going to go short again after we catch him out, and they're just set for long puckouts every time. You need to keep them thinking, keep them playing short every so often, so to try to keep their forwards in towards our goal, to try to create a bit more space for our half forward line behind, and try to get the bodies there then to win ball. So absolutely, it's important to have a bit of courage with it, and to not just get too downbeat if things go wrong once or twice, because no, it's never going to go perfect,
No.
The puck-out stat there, he said 14 out of 38 is that's probably quite poor. I didn't know that stat.
That's the long ones as well.
Yeah,
so I don't know if I touched it there. Yeah.
Well, if you go back to Limerick's three half backs now, the last day in Jim Burns and Hannon and Kyle Hayes, that stat isn't going to improve a lot if you start bombing balls down to the three of them. Like you saw once the game got going the last day, they were fierce strong under the high ball. So, back to 18, what you were talking about, we need more movement. We probably need a lot more movement now the next day to make it a little easier on the goalie, just to be pumping ball be running into little pockets, creating space for these puckouts. Because, we will. I've no doubt we will do that. But if we go short, probably need to know the plan. In 18, it seemed like we didn't know. It just didn't seem that we weren't in sync with each other. Any of the cornerbacks were getting the ball, and it just felt like it was. I'll go wrong. If you watch it again, you'll see it was frustrating. They weren't sure whether they were supposed to go long, or there wasn't really a man running off them to go short. So that's not going to happen anyway. They're going to have learned from all that anyway. And as I say, the long ones, that's not going to be an option. Bombing balls. I know we've strengthened the half forward line, but Joe Cannon, these lads are going to want the ball in front of them. So it's going to take massive work from our 5 or 7 or 8, 9, just with movement to create space.
That's for sure. I suppose just in terms of our starting lineup, then probably the biggest question mark will be maybe the midfield, and do Davy Burke and Johnny Coen hold on to their spots? And I think you touched on it there that you would start Davy Burke, Chunky. Would you start Adrian Toohey alongside him, or who would you give the nod to if it was you that was picking the team?
I honestly, I'm not sure. I'd start David Burke for certain. I'm not sure where they'll play him. I'm pretty sure they will start him. Maybe they'll give him a deep lying wing forward role or something. Probably something like that. Maybe as nearly a third midfielder. Couldn't see them playing him as a sweeper. Toohey came in the last day. Sure, he was brilliant. To be fair, he was excellent. And I had great time for him. He's a fine athlete, strong, very, but then you go back to Johnny Coen with the start ahead of Johnny Coen, but he'd have to come into consideration for a lot of different roles with his engine. Do you know what I mean? So, it's great. It's great to be complaining. I think he has easily got 20-22 players that he can pick from the next day, which is, I'm glad it's him that's deciding, not me, because it is a tricky one.
Yeah.
It is a tricky one. But the way the middle third is gone, it doesn't really matter now if you're named 10, 11, 12, or 8 or 9. It seems to be, that's just going to be, you're going to be all over. And as we see with Joe Cooney, even at 7, the last day, now the one thing I will say about all that movement is we probably need to be fierce wary of their 2 wing forwards, because they'll play deep, but you'll notice that they're picking up a lot of scores, and you'd see Hegarty might be right half forward, he'll pop over a point from the top left corner, and then So you can't really decide, I'll just sit back, and you really need to be tracking these lads, especially if you're playing a sweeper. You're just going with them, because they seem to find these pockets in a lot of space.
Yeah. How do you see it lining out, Patrick, in that midfield sector? Because that's probably, by and large, that's going to be where the question marks are going to be, what way it's going to pan out. If you were picking it yourself, I'll put the same question that I did to Junkie. What way would you go with it there, or how would you would you? You'd probably give your own clubman a nod anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, no, I think you have to ask the question. You know, what's worth more to the team in the grand scheme of things? Is it we'll take Adrian Toohey and Johnny Coen? Do you get more out of for Galway by starting Johnny Coen and then bringing in Adrian Toohey with 25 minutes left? Or do you get more by doing the opposite, by starting Adrian Toohey and then bringing in Johnny Coen with 25 minutes left? You know, does Johnny Coen offer the same impact as Ado? Maybe not, but will Ado do all the things that Johnny Coen has become so accustomed to doing at midfield, having played there for the last 4 or 5 years? Maybe not as well, because he's not as well versed at playing that midfield role. So they're the kind of questions that, you know, comes into it. So look, obviously, I'd like to see him start, obviously, but
well,
you know,
who's gonna pick up? Who would you trust to pick up Cian Lynch?
See, it's probably going to be that man. Like, you know, I wouldn't. You know, if David Burke's midfield, I'd be letting David Burke hurl his own game. Like, you know.
Well, he won't be. I'd say we'd all agree. Like, Cian Lynch is probably the one man you have. Well, Gilhan. Well, Dahi'd probably pick Gilhan anyway, but
yeah.
Cian Lynch will have to be kept tabs on, like 100%.
Yeah, and you'd have to say both Coen and Ado will be both very well capable of that. Coen has done it from midfield, and Ado's obviously well used to playing in the backs. And you know, even his debut against Clare in 16, his first start, he was man marking Podge Collins today. Like, you know, so it's something he's been trusted with before as well. So it's probably the role you see them both playing. So in that regard as well, you know, are you better off Johnny Coen doing that and then bringing Ado in for try to get that bit of, you know, that bit of energy off him for the last 25 minutes? Maybe you are, like, you know. So plenty of questions going around in the boys' heads this week, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, when his pace is so he's light and quick, Adrian Toohey will say. So when the game is a bit stretched, you know, you probably get a bit more out of his pace with 20. Like I thought it was one of his best games in the Galway jersey, and he only played a half last weekend. Like, and he directly set up 1-2 when it was definitely his best game in midfield anyway. Just I suppose then you touched on Cian Lynch there, Chunky, and we're going to win the matchups later on. But there is always the question as well, like Limerick can throw a spanner into the works, and they get it against Tip. Like Tip earmarked Ellen Flynn to mark Cian Lynch, and next thing Cian Lynch goes and starts centre forward, like, and like I suppose if one thing we're probably under a bit of pressure at 6 because Garage hasn't really hit the heights of maybe 2017 yet this year. He's probably struggled a small bit, and that's a matchup if it was to come to pass that, you know, you would be worried at from a Galway point of view if it was Garage against Cian Lynch and Cian Lynch was dropping out and Garage was kind of just there minding that kind of space and Lynch was floating around.
Well, if you're going to go with a sweeper, then Garage is he's going to pick him up. I don't know. I'm just going to throw full confidence in them, and if he's going in centre forward, I wouldn't be messing around like Tipperary did. I'd be saying, Garage, you were an option for Hurler of the Year in 2017. You're picking up Cian Lynch, who's the former Hurler of the Year. Can you do the job? He's going to be chomping at the bit. Like, he's going to take it on, no problem. He's fit, strong, able to hurl. It's probably not been going the best, but sure, what better day to start than if Cian Lynch comes in and top here? You know what I mean? Like, you just have to. This is it. Like, you know what I mean? You lose the game. What? You know, drive into it, pick him up. You'll be really hoping he comes in and top you. I'd say Garage Mac. Like, you know, that's the way them lads' mindset will be the next day.
Yeah. Well, if it was me personally, I'd really prefer David Reedy coming in and top me, but Garage Mac might be a completely different animal. So.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember playing. Is it Patrick's? Well, they're playing. They play for Cian Lynch and Burns. Yeah. Jesus, we played them a few years ago in a challenge game down in Portumna. I remember saying to myself, "Fucking hell!" I says, "Who the hell is this lad?" Like, I think he 3 points got in the first half from about 100 yards. Jim Burns, but thankfully, Andy Smith was actually playing centre back, and Cian Lynch had about 10 points from play God. I said, I don't feel too bad. And I said, them lads will win a county title in a few years, but yeah, they won one since anyway. But it's not a Cian Lynch quality player, in fairness.
I suppose one final thing, just from a Galway lineup point of view, then, lads. I suppose one person who's probably been criticised, I've seen a small bit, or, you know, and I think personally maybe a bit harshly, is Conor Cooney. Just his role this year is very different to what people seem to be expecting him. Like, you know, he's probably not there to score as heavily as he was. I know he set up the 2 goals the last time he bagged a point. do you see him? Like I think O'Neill seems to have massive faith in him, and there's obviously a reason why that O'Neill sees him as this kind of, there's this kind of position that's earmarked for Conor Cooney, and I don't know if there's anyone else that can actually do it in the squad, to be honest with you, because your other options there are, maybe a Jason Flynn or an Niall Burke, but they're fairly different kind of players in that sense. Do you see maybe, any kind of like surprise, we'll say, like in terms of the way O'Neill might line up the attack? Is there any chance we might see a Jason Flynn starting or a Niall Burke maybe instead of a Conor Cooney, like the way they kind of pulled a rabbit from the hat, should I say, against Kilkenny?
For me, yeah, it's a tricky one. Like Conor's kind of probably like he's been wing forward, full forward, centre forward. He probably hasn't got a massive chance to settle on a position, but at the same time, I would say it's easy enough looking lads closely, and his work rate is phenomenal. To be fair, he had a good role with St Thomas's this year as well, out centre forward, but he wasn't scoring massive scores from play. But like Joe, his distribution was brilliant and his work rate was phenomenal. And I think that's nearly the way the inter-county game has gone. So for me, I wouldn't be criticising him at all, to be honest. I'd probably be surprised if they dropped him now as well, to be honest. I'd say he'll start, but look, on a personal level, will Conor be hoping to be more of an influence in the game? I'd say he will. Like, he hasn't been a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 in any means, but he's still getting involved, and to me, he's probably getting involved more. It's probably a part of his game that I think has developed a lot. His work rate. But look, you're not going to get away at inter-county level anymore if your work rate isn't good. Like it's the first tick in the box. But he's doing it, and I think he'll play. And do you know what? He's the kind of player that if he got 1 or 2 at the start, he could go and get 5 or 6, but it doesn't bother me if he doesn't, or it won't bother the management. If he's getting on ball, it's the main thing, and he's working hard. Look at he set up. Did you say he set up 4 goals? Do you know even the skill levels, get the ball across the field for wheeling the last day. He doesn't panic on the ball. Like he's very intelligent hurler. Really is probably the word. He's a good striker off both sides. He's work rate. I'd say Conor will start, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he's an important cog in that middle third of next day, because we saw against Kilkenny how impressive he was on puckouts, and I think he's a huge asset for us there in that regard. He wasn't used that same effect against Tip in that he played inside in the first half, and in the second half, a couple of puckouts went towards him, but just didn't really happen for him in the second half. But I think he needs to play at 10 for me and just get a fair share of the puckouts down on top of him. And in fairness, he'll break them at the very least, and he's a good man to actually break them just forward, right in front of him. So I think he could be very important for Galway in that respect. But I think the discipline does need to improve slightly. I think he's probably trying a small bit too hard to make an impression sometimes, and he's given away 6-7 frees now the last 2 games combined. So that does need to improve. But I think he can be a huge plus for us on puckouts, and go out with the attitude of, I'm going to actually run myself into the ground here for 50 minutes, and then I have those boys there to come in for me and do their shift for the last 20 minutes. I think that needs to be the attitude, and if he does that, I think he can be a huge asset for Galway on Sunday.
That's for sure. I suppose one aspect that we probably haven't touched on yet would be Limerick having the week off last weekend and Galway facing Tip. We were there when we were chatting to Aidan Hart afterwards, and he said he didn't think it'd be an issue at all. Do you see it being any kind of issue? It's been 3 weekends in a row, chunky for Galway now. Limerick had the week's break. Do you see it being? It's obviously probably an advantage to Limerick in a way, but do you see it being game defining? We'll say.
No, I don't, to be honest, because I don't think that Tipperary game was the most physically game the last day. It didn't look that way on the television. I expected it to be probably more physical. And actually, Aidan Hart, I met him. I was talking for a few minutes as all, but I didn't ask him how they seemed fine. But he seemed fresh as daisy. That was on Sunday morning. So the truth being told, them lads they're elite athletes. And as I say, they're trained to get through games. They probably. This week was all about recovery for them, and there's enough lads in charge of that to make sure them lads will be right. And there's a panel in 2022. Look, you could sit here next week and Limerick could get ahead in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and lads might look back and in hindsight and say, oh, the extra of the game. There'll always be excuses. But I think that game was badly needed, that Tipperary game, and I wouldn't be using that at all. I think we've a bone to pick now with Limerick from 2018. It's not that they beat us, it's because we didn't perform. And that's just a fact. We didn't do the simple things right. We didn't get a lot of things right that day. And I'm sure even if the management were still around, they'd love to be playing Limerick again. And because just I feel we've a bone to pick at them, and I think we'll get a performance the next day, and I genuinely think we'll win it.
Good stuff. That's just there's great positivity here this week. I thought we might be a slight bit more cautious going in, but Jesus, no, there seems to be massive positive. Good stuff. I suppose just on the possible matchups, then we've kind of listed a few here, and if any of them stand out to you, probably we can kind of go back and have a look at them. But I'll run down through them here. We just kind of a list. So you're probably likely Dahi Burke against Aaron Gilhan, Shane Cooney, marking probably Graham Mulcahy, Aidan Hart, Peter Casey, Joe Cooney, Gerard Hegarty, Fintan Burke, Tom Morrissey, Garage McInerney, probably one of David Reedy, Kyle Hayes, and maybe even Keane Lynch. We'll have to see about that. We touched on this Sean Finn and Conor Whelan battle, probably Conkennan, Barry Nash, and maybe Richie English. I know he's back training and everything. We don't know how he is either. I suppose Cathal Mannion, depending on where he goes, if he's at 11 or midfield, it could be either maybe one of Will O'Donoghue or Declan Hannon, Kenning perhaps, and Jeremy Burns. Keane Lynch, I think we've earmarked there. It could be any one of a number of players really. They're probably a huge one. And then Dan Morrissey, I suppose one aspect would be he'd be full back, and it probably wouldn't be his preferred position. So even though he might be, he could potentially be kind of a loose man back there. It might be something to look at. Do you see any of them battles or any of the ones we've kind of listed there? Any one stand out for you? I'll start with you, Patrick, first, or anything that you see is massive.
I think the Joe Cooney Garrett Hegarty one is huge. I think just with the form Hegarty's bringing into it, and he kind of epitomises everything that Limerick are about. You see him popping up all over the place, and he's now picking off 3, 4, 5 pints a game. His performances have gone through the roof. Even looking at him in that 18 final, his work rate was outstanding, but his presence on the scoreboard wasn't the same as what it is now. And he's a lad that's he's nearly nailed on for an All-Star the way things are going at the minute. But equally, I think Joe Cooney is nearly nailed on for an All-Star too. He's been, for me, possibly Galway's best player this year. Absolutely reveling since he's gone back in the half-back line and growing and improving with every game we play. So I think that battle is huge. Whoever comes out on top of it, you can't underestimate the importance of his battle with Dan McCormack the last day too. I know McCormack picked off a point, but sure, Joe Cooney picked off a point as well. And overall, I think Joe Cooney probably got the better of that, and it's hugely important that he can come out on top on that one for me. Yeah.
What about yourself, Chunky, from that list? I don't know if you have it in front of you.
I was kind of laughing to myself there. I was saying, Jesus, that is some list, all right. There's heavyweight matches. Madison Square Garden is where you want to be bringing them fucking matchups. The Dahi Burke one for me will probably be vital as well. They're all vital, but the one that really stands out, I suppose, is Gilhan and Dahi. I do believe Dahi will hopefully come out on top, seeing as he's going to get man the match. But I don't think people realise the work rate Gilhan is putting in. It's an awful tough role. He's a bit of a Conor Whelan. They're kind of similar, and he's moving left, moving right, but he's also linking up an awful lot of scores. He's making a lot of scores for Limerick. So trying to get on top of that to ensure he hasn't got the ball in his hand as much as he has been getting. The players doing. People think there's players doing well on Gilhan. He's still getting the ball. He's still causing enough of havoc. And I think if Dahi can take that away the next day from him, it'll be massive. High balls into the corner, and I suppose with the help of the sweeper then as well. And should any of the two boys buzzing around, but I'm quite surprised that they don't play Seamus Flanagan. To be honest, I know the full forward line is unbelievable, but to me, I thought they were brilliant with Flanagan. And he seems to be brilliant when he comes on. I know the impact sub and all that, but I'd be a little worried if he started, and I don't think he'll start. But I'd be a little worried now because he'd be a lad like who'd pick him up if he rocked into the full forward. Like he's good in the air, he's good low. He's like I read a stat there. One of the matches that were talking about, he ran 14 kilometers or something in a game against Cork in a Munster Championship game before. Like that's outrageous. Full forward, like. So to me, the main matchup to me is Dahi, but don't be surprised if Kylie threw in someone like Flanagan just to throw a spanner in the works. And he would be a spanner to me.
Yeah. One, I suppose, just on Flanagan, I suppose he probably was struggling for a bit of form during 2019. I suppose he kind of lost his place, and the other two boys were kind of going very well. So maybe that might be the reason. But I agree with you completely. He's a huge asset coming off the bench, and geez, he's offered something very different than say Mulcahy and Casey, and he's more of a worker, and he'll really put you under pressure as a defender. I suppose one battle I think that could be defined from a Galway point of view would be Brian Concannon maybe on Barry Nash, because I actually think Barry Nash is a player that Galway can really get a bit of joy out of. I don't like to single out one particular person, but this is a battle I think that Galway can, really, get on top of it from the outset, because probably Barry Nash isn't really a natural cornerback. I know he wasn't even a natural wing back really a lot of the time. I think he was. Did he start an attack and kind of move back the field as they had so many options up there? But now to find yourself at probably cornerback against the player as in form as Concannon will say, for me, you mentioned Joseph Cooney was probably Galway's best player so far, and I wouldn't be too far off it, but for me, it's probably been Concannon, Patrick, to be honest with you. I think he's been awful consistent, and he's won some amount of frees. Like he's the man who got Barrett sent off the last day. He was, I think all in all, he was fouled or he set up 5 points, and he managed to tuck away the goal. So yeah, for me, that could be one. Now you could have Dan Morrissey shifting across and maybe leaving Nash free as well if Galway go with 2 men inside. So that mightn't actually come to pass. But if that was the way things were to line out, I'd be very happy to see Concannon being tracked by Barry Nash there, and I think he could get plenty of joy. I suppose we'll just move on from the kind of matchups, and I suppose Chunky, we'll go back to you there. It's just in terms of size and hurling ability, I suppose there's probably no one better equipped in the country at the moment than Galway to match this Limerick, I suppose, juggernaut in a lot of people's eyes, because they have so much power and their height and strength, and they're able to hurl as well. But you've mentioned it before, and that Galway are more than capable as well, and they're probably capable of putting in a Kilkenny type performance last year as well. The way Kilkenny caught Limerick on the hop in the semi-final.
Yeah, no, and I remember because I actually fancied Kilkenny that day as well. But I tell you, Galway have to do that though. It won't be anything short of that. Probably wouldn't be good enough. So, but if we can produce that kind of animal-like performance where the strength will come out, and we'll be fine. We're definitely the second most capable team of taking on Limerick physically. Anyway, that's for certain. When you go through the team, like as we spoke about Dahi and Garrod and these lads, Manions and Joe Cannon, and you know what I mean? They're physically massive men. Even Whelan, they're big men. They're physicality all over the pitch.
Yeah, Patrick, just on, I suppose, one aspect with that we haven't touched on either would be Shane O'Neill and John Fitzgerald's local knowledge, shall we say? And these boys, like O'Neill has worked with so many of these lads with Napirsheek. I think there were 7 in the squad. I think he was quoted as saying, and there would have been other lads involved as well down through the years. So he should know these players and this club scene like the back of his hand from going around to watch club games and watching opposition, and knows their strengths and weaknesses. We say, do you see him like that? Should realistically have a huge bearing in the matchups, and Galway having a potential to get the matchups as close to spot on as possible from the off.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, if there's someone that's going to know kind of how Limerick operates, he's a lad that'll certainly have a fair idea, just from, and like even was interesting to hear his comments yesterday and how friendly he still is with the Napirsheek boys, and he'd be in contact with them, and you're saying that they cut contact there a few weeks ago, obviously, but just interesting to hear that side of it, and it didn't end when he stopped managing Napirsheek as it would with some managers and club players, But yeah, no, he'll have seen plenty of all these lads, and he'd know Kylie very well, obviously. But I also thought it interesting his comments where he was saying that it could be a hindrance as well, in that you could have a preconceived idea of a fella, and then he goes out and he's in a different role or he does something different, and that So you certainly there's a familiarity there, but you can't be banking on it either. Like, you know, you can put the plan in place as to how you want to curtail a fella, but you have to also have the plans in case they have a plan B or something changes in their setup or thereabouts, because, you know, nothing ever runs fully to script. Like, so I think we're in a good place in that regard, and that we are very adaptable, both in terms of personnel and setup and shape and everything like that. So I think it'll be a help, but I don't see it being as big a factor as some people make it out to be.
Okay.
It's unusual as well, lads, to see, like, from the last time we played them, Joe Cooney was in the half forward line and he's gone back in the half back line, and Kyle Hayes was centre forward and caused havoc, got man of the match in the 2018 final, and he's back wing back now as well. Whether that'll stay the same, I'm not sure. I kind of hope it does on that point, because I think he'd be way more influential in the half forward line. He's a serious, big, strong man, like, with the ball on the hurl as well. So I hope, to me, I'd say at wing back, we'd probably be looking to target him, to be honest.
Yeah. You would imagine you would. Just on Limerick, Chunky, I suppose the game is in quarters now, and we've all seen from watching Limerick, Conor pulls out the tactics board every water break as well. They're fairly astute in the way they kind of set up, and I suppose they probably bamboozled Galway a bit in 2018, but you probably wouldn't see that happening on this occasion, tactics board or no tactics board.
Yeah, I'd be hoping now our lads can go out and, like, forget about the tactics board the next day. Like, it's All-Ireland semi-final day. Maybe hoping the Limerick lads be going in at the quarter and to be damn glad to get a glass of water and not be looking at that whiteboard. But yeah, look, they obviously have so many different systems. Galway have them too. Like, you know, I'm not sure about these tactic boards after 15 minutes. You know, like, they're grand. You know, but look, at the matchups are there. As I said, we spoke about it earlier. Like, it's going to be a complete and utter war zone out the middle. So. I'm not sure whatever tactics are going to be done. I'd say it'll be during the week now, and the video analysis will be done, and it'll be game on now once 4 o'clock Sunday comes.
Yeah, just in terms of scope for improvement, Patrick, I think Limerick were maybe in their opening 2 games they were operating close enough to the peak of their powers. First, maybe we haven't seen Galway, you know, anywhere near what they're capable of yet, and they've definitely on the tip performance. They have a lot of potential there to build on, we'll say. You know, we mentioned it there during the week as well, there was no lad at 9 out of 10, and you said the same, Chunky. There was no lad 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, probably against Tipperary, but they still managed to get the job done, and Jesus, it was, you bet the All-Ireland champions at the end of the day without, you know, having any outstanding performance.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll say we beat a better Tipperary than Limerick beat. No question about that in my mind, just in terms of the team that Sheedy picked, and obviously the conditions obviously didn't help and played more into Limerick's hands. But I think Limerick won at their ease the first 2 days without actually getting out of fourth gear, to be honest. But I thought it was the Waterford game really was where you saw, you know, they were being pushed, and in fairness, you'd have to be very impressed with how they responded. And again, it was that water break that changed the game in both halves. You know, Waterford in a great place at both water breaks, but from there on, Limerick took over again, and the last quarter especially, like, you know, and for a finish, had that game stayed going, Limerick were going to win it by more. Had it stayed going, I think that one's the final. But you'd have to be very impressed with them mentally in that regard, in that Waterford had got a right run of them, and especially in the third quarter, and they responded well to it, and, you know, the whiteboard didn't change that much at that in that 2 minutes, you know.
One of you 2 lads might have a role to play the next day when this tactics board comes out, lads. You'll be at the game, maybe.
We'll shout down from the top, yeah.
Don't want to grab it off him.
I think definitely in terms of, you know, most of the basics, Limerick had them down to a T in that Munster final especially, whereas, you know, you look at our game, I thought the work-ons for us from Kilkenny were our conversion rate and our free count, and we improved in both those fronts against Tip, but equally then we struggled on puckouts, which is something we did quite well against Kilkenny. So, you know, that's one of the most critical areas of the game is puckouts now, the way it's gone. So like if you improve in that area, you're automatically just going to see a better goal performance. That's like there's no question about that. You know, if you've ball in your hand, it's not for easier to play the game of hurling. You know, so I think that's very important, and it's not that hard to fix it. Like, you know, it's just a case of getting good lads under the ball, and then having lads in and being cute on the deck and getting that ball into their hand, like, you know, and having, you know, using your body and getting lads out your way, because they're well capable of it. Like, you know, it's a battle of hunger and intensity in those close quarters on the ground. You just have to want it more than they do, you know.
It's promising now as well that we've played 2 of our games in Croke Park already, you know, as opposed to Limerick, and we played quite well in both of them as well. I'm not saying it's an advantage, but it's definitely no harm that we've, you know, I'm sure it's a stranger place playing in an empty Croke Park stadium, so it's nice to have that small bit of a small. It might be a small advantage as well. Like, you know, there's 2 games played there already.
I definitely agree with that, because just the logistics of making the trip up, Limerick won't have made the trip up driving up by themselves so far, whereas Galway will. You know, Galway know the route now, how you know where you're eating even beforehand. You know, just even simple little things that might be gnawing on your mind. You know. Yeah, but I suppose finally, then, just one last aspect we might touch on would be the both teams' benches. You mentioned Flanagan there, and I suppose Limerick have the likes of David Dempsey as well, Darragh O'Donovan, your man Adrian Breen came on the last day and scored a point. Richie English is knocking around as well after injury, and I suppose Pat Ryan would be there as well. And I'm not sure what the story is with Paddy O'Loughlin, but Galway are no slouches themselves, and they've plenty less to call on. I suppose we haven't even touched on someone like, say, Darren Morris, who only came on for 5 minutes the last day, but someone like him could have a much bigger bearing on the weekend, you know, if called upon, like, because, you know, depending on matchups, he might actually be more suited to, say, one of the Limerick attackers than maybe someone that starts. Or, you know, if that change that needs to be made, there's someone there like a Darren Morrissey that can come on and kind of make an impact.
For sure, yeah, and I think by all accounts, actually, David Dempsey is very doubtful for Sunday as well, so that'll be no harm in the wider hockey world to have one less option. So Kylie said that there yesterday, the day before. So yeah, like we know the impact they have, as you say, like, you know, and it's kind of there's a sort of a procession over there where you've Flanagan is usually the first on, followed by probably David Dempsey a lot of days, but you mightn't have him the next day. So you have a Pat Ryan to come in, you have an Adrian Breen, Darragh O'Donovan, and they're all making impacts on the scoreboard. Like, so to go, we need to counter that with bringing in the likes of the Darren Morrisseys and maybe the Sean Loftuses and these fellas in at the back, or even an Adrian Toohey coming on the half back line, maybe, you know. And they're all just, you know, it's probably important to match fire with fire in that regard. And, you know, I was very encouraged to see that they used the bench more willingly the last day, with taking off Shane Cooney and Fintan Burke when neither had done anything wrong, but they just took them out. You know, maybe the legs were starting to tire a small bit and they got fresh legs in there. And I thought that was very important in the last 15 or 20 minutes, you know. And I think it's important we do it again the next day, and that we challenge them equally up the end. We get the Jason Flynns on, maybe even David Nyland, something different that they wouldn't have experienced before. So I get him on good quality ball and get him shooting, like, you know. So I think, yeah, we're certainly it's going to be a huge factor, more so than in any other game, probably, because it's so well documented at this stage how important Limerick's bench is to them and how big an impact they do make. So it really, more so than any other game, it's a 20-man game on Sunday for me anyhow. Yeah.
Right, sure. Look, we won't delay any longer. Chunky, you nailed your colours to the mast, I think, initially, in terms of a verdict. There's no change in your mind after the last.
I thought it was over then. It's an hour later now. I haven't changed my mind anyway. If that's the question you're asking me. No, I'm not in any way going to disrespect Limerick, that's for sure, because I obviously think they're an outstanding side. But I really like this Galway side, and I just hope to bring that fire. I think they've been doing really well. I just think there's another All-Ireland in them, and I think this could be the year, and I hope it is. And I'm going for a Daithí Burke-led Galway win on Sunday.
Mighty. Patrick?
Yeah, and I think I'd echo what Chunky says in many respects, and I don't think the animal has really come out in Galway yet, and I don't think it's had to. The last day was pure just Galway tip sort of stuff, and as you say, there wasn't that much belting in it or physical confrontations. That, and even the Kilkenny game, we were comfortable for an awful long way, and then just couldn't respond the last quarter. So I think if we bring that animal to it right from the off, and it's something you're going to have to sustain, and they know that. But I think if we bring it from the off this time, I think we're in a great spot to, many people think it'll be a surprise if we win. I don't think it's a surprise if Galway beat Limerick, but and I really hope it happens.
You've won me over, lads. I was kind of on the fence there initially coming in, but
come down off that fence.
Come down off it. We were colours to met. I suppose one thing I will just say, Anna, would be, the size of the green jersey, and that a lot of them boys were there in 18, and just the pain of that day, not doing yourself justice on an Ireland final day must be one of the, most toughest things you can imagine, that they didn't do that. And if they can bring a performance, if they can play to the best of their ability, we'll say, I can see them winning as well. And please God it comes to pass, and we've an All-Ireland final to look forward to. Let's look at we won't keep it any longer. Thanks a million for your time again, and sure, please God, we'll be back with a review show next week, and then a preview show the week after, and we might go all out on a bumper one for an All-Ireland final or something like that. Chunky, we might book you the week off work altogether.
What level will we be on then? Level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Yeah. You still won't be in the pub anyhow, don't worry about it.
If the pub's open, they won an All-Ireland final. Sure, we might have a shot from there or something like that.
We'll hardly be in the premium level anyway, since you.
No, that's for sure. Look, thanks a million, lads, again, and cheers to everyone that tuned in, and be sure to like, subscribe, follow the usual crack, and we'll chat to you probably sometime next week, early next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Good luck.
Thanks, lads.